Hi, I'm Kara Savio. Well, as a parent, you want the best for your child. And if there was a way to protect them from sickness, even death, you would. Unfortunately, we can't always protect our children from life. However, by getting your child tested for lead poisoning, you can protect them from the dangers of lead.
Lead poisoning in children 6 and under can lead to learning and behavioral disabilities, attention deficit disorder, high blood pressure, seizures, and even death. But according to health experts, you can help protect your child from these tragedies simply by getting them tested for lead every year from birth until 6 years old. Yvonne Franklin is the lead nurse case manager for the city's Department of Health and explains why lead testing during the early years is crucial.
This is the time when children are most vulnerable to lead poisoning because of their hand-to-mouth behavior, the fact that they play with things that they put in their mouths, they play on the floor, they're exposed to soil. So these are the ages when children are most vulnerable to lead poisoning.
Detecting lead poisoning is a challenge because it can affect every system in the body. However, since there are no obvious symptoms, it often goes undiagnosed until children have already suffered serious side effects.
They're irreversible, first of all. Brain damage, because when the children are so young, it is very easy for the brain to be damaged because the lead can pass through the barriers that are otherwise closed off once they get older.
Consequently, Missouri law requires that every child from birth until the age of 6 and who lives in a high-risk area for lead have their blood levels tested every year. Matt Steiner, epidemiologist for the City of St. Louis Department of Health, explains what it means to be in a high-risk area and how you can find out if you live in one.
There's a number of factors that go into it, but it's primarily the housing stock, the age of the housing stock, and the conditions that it's in. Older housing stock has a tendency to be a little bit more deteriorated, and so you're more likely to have more lead-based paint hazards occur in those types of homes. So the state of Missouri actually designates zip codes as being in the high-risk areas, and all zip codes that fall within the city of St. Louis are actually designated high risk. Missouri Department of Health's website has that information on there, and they can look up their zip code and find out if it's designated high risk.
And although some doctors require children who are at risk for lead to be tested at their annual physicals, many may not.
At least anecdotally, what I've seen is that some physicians think that if there's not a problem at age 1, and then like if the environment hasn't changed, if the child hasn't moved into a new house or something like that, then they don't need to retest. But the problem with that line of thinking is that there are other environments where a child can be exposed to lead rather than just in the home. There's school, there's daycare, there's grandma's house, and so it's really important to get that test done every year.
And according to Steiner, it's the job of both the physician and parents to ensure that children at risk for lead poisoning receive the lead test every year until the age of 6. Lead poisoning in children is a concern in many cities across the country. In fact, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as the CDC, there are 500,000 children ages 1 through 5 in the U.S. with elevated lead levels. For this reason, in 2003, the City of St. Louis decided to tackle lead poisoning head-on by encouraging parents to get their children and their homes tested for lead. As a result, by 2007, the number of children in the City of St. Louis affected by lead poisoning was cut in half. And although through the years we've continued to have some success, it's still estimated that at least 1 child in every 11 suffers from lead exposure. In fact, due to a recent change in lead action levels by the CDC, from 10 micrograms to now 5 micrograms per deciliter of blood, the number of children in the city of St. Louis whose blood levels are now high enough to warrant public health action or intervention have increased.
And we have actually long tracked children with the micrograms of 5 or greater. We've actually been tracking that since 2003. And we've had programs that reach out to them encouraging a building inspection and all that because just because they weren't technically lead poisoned at that time, there's still some evidence of exposure there, and we really want to make sure that we check out their environment and make sure that everything's okay.
And according to Franklin, the CDC implemented the new standards for a reason.
A case is opened when the lead level reaches 10 micrograms per deciliters as a measurement to begin case management. But it has been determined that lead poisoning starts to affect the child at lower levels. That is the reason we believe CDC started to look at levels below 10, as low as 5 in some instances.
Although the recent changes from the CDC poses new challenges, the City of St. Louis's Department of Health is poised to meet them.
And what do you want for Christmas this year?
I want to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
My mom had our house checked for lead. Have you had all your elves check all the toys for lead?
Excuse me?
High levels of lead in toys can hurt us. Some toys like cars, trains, or even baby bibs can be dangerous.
Over the years, the Lead Safe St. Louis campaign has been one of the most effective in the country, resulting in significant gains.
So we have about 25,000 kids under the age of 6 in the city of St. Louis. Every year we test roughly half of them, which is actually one of the highest testing rates in the country, but that still leaves about 50% of the kids that are going untested.
And we're with Lead Safe St. Louis.
But although the city's lead campaign has outpaced that of many other cities, Department of Health staffers say with the CDC's new changes, there's much more work to be done. So what exactly does the CDC change mean for children in the city of St. Louis and their families?
So it means that essentially if your child was tested for lead prior to 2012, they were told if they were 10 micrograms per deciliter and over, then educational information and possibly case management was offered to that parent for that child. 9 micrograms per deciliter and lower, you were told that you were in a safe zone. CDC no longer uses that term safe zone because, let's be honest, there are no safe levels for lead. So what that means now is any child that tests that's 5 micrograms per deciliter to 9 micrograms per deciliter, we're automatically sending out educational information to that parent so they can become more aware of lead and its negative effects it can have on their child. 10 micrograms per deciliter and greater, that child is offered case management.
Although the CDC's changes have caused the number of children to be tested and treated to increase, City of St. Louis Department of Health workers say they believe their lead safe programs, along with parent involvement, will help get those numbers down.
LaKiska Stevenson, a Lead Safe St. Louis program representative, says one of the ways they are informing the public about the dangers of lead is through the Department of Health's lead clinic.
We target all groups in the community, especially with the children ages 0 to 6. And then we also target the pregnant moms. We go in and ask if we could test the children ages 0 to 6 to get their lead testing done. If the child is between 5 and 9, we'll just update the parents on what can occur to help reduce the lead in a child. But if they're over 10, then it becomes an open case and a nurse in the state will follow them for a year to help them reduce the lead. And then also if they want to have their home tested, then we'll refer them to the building division and then they will have their home tested for lead as well.
But according to the CDC, in addition to testing children ages 0 through 6, there's a population of adults that also need to be tested for lead as well, and that's pregnant women. In fact, the City of St. Louis partners with Athenia Healthcare to educate women enrolled in the Mommy and Me program. Program specialist Jolanda Auberry says she thinks the program is effective.
A Mommy and Me program is a program that is designed for pregnant moms to come to various sessions of classes each week. And on one of the weeks we come in where we discuss lead testing in a pregnant mom, and we also inform them as well about testing their children once they're born between the ages of 0 to 6 years old.
In addition, one of the goals of the Lead Safe St. Louis program is to help educate parents on how exposure to lead can occur. Exposure to lead occurs most commonly from paint in homes before 1978. In fact, according to Joe Ellerbrake, a City of St. Louis risk assessor lead inspector, Even renovations like sanding and cutting can create hazardous lead dust and chips that can be harmful to adults and children.
Almost anything that disturbs the paint or the plaster, in particularly sanding. A lot of people don't realize this, but to work lead safe, you really should do all this moist. Back in the day, you would take a belt sander to a dry surface and just let it rip. And what you were really doing was spewing that lead dust everywhere and creating a much larger hazard than you started with. So the first thing is you want to work moist. You want to be very concerned about the cleanup. And you want to contain. And it's easy enough to find plenty of information on how to work lead safe in your home when you do renovations.
Exposure to lead can also occur from water that's pumped through lead pipes and in certain toys and jewelry.
And although the effects of lead poisoning are not correctable, it is preventable, which is why it is so crucial for doctors, caregivers, schools, all to take the necessary steps to prevent lead poisoning before it occurs. So what can you do to help protect your child or children you know from the dangers of lead?
First, make sure pregnant women in the home are tested for lead because lead in the mother's blood can transfer to her unborn child. Second, obey the law. Missouri law states that children 0 through 6 years old in high-risk areas must be tested for lead every year until their 6th birthday. And here are a few more steps you can take to help eliminate lead. Wash your hands before preparing food. Make sure your child's hands, pacifier bottles, and toys are washed often. Make sure your child's diet consists of foods high in iron, vitamin C, and calcium. Do not dry scrape old paint, only wet scrape and wet clean immediately afterward. Do not dry sweep. Use wet cleaning methods for floors and surfaces only. Use only cold tap water for drinking, cooking, and making baby formula. Use HEPA filters for vacuums. Make sure any renovations to your home are done by lead-safe certified workers. Don't allow children to play in bare soil. Also, if you own, rent, or live in a home that was built before 1978, you should have your home tested for lead as well. And remember, the city offers pregnant residents and children under the age of 6 free blood level test, as well as free home lead inspections. Michelle Simmons is the citizen advocate for the City of St. Louis Building Division and says that even if a family's home tests positive for lead, there are options and resources available.
The city has a HEPA vacuum loan program that is high efficiency particulate air vacuum. That is a vacuum that goes out to the homes that is used in the home and used in for windows and exterior to clean up paint chips and lead dust. We also have a relocation program in which on a case-by-case a family is able to relocate to lead-safe housing.
For more information, go to leadsafestlouis.com or call 314-657-1487. And you can request a home lead inspection by calling the Citizen Service Bureau at 314-622-4800. Remember, lead poisoning is not correctable, but it is preventable. Please act now and do your part to keep your loved ones safe.